Good morning. Jim and I are members of the Good Relations Committee, and we have a special announcement to share with you this morning.
Given the riotous and violent events of this past week, it is plain to see how we speak to and treat one another matters, whether that is from the highest office in the land, across the political aisle, or across the pew. Conflict is unavoidable and can even be healthy. Yet conflict can also be utterly toxic and deadly, be it in the height of the capital or in the microcosm of the congregation.
As members of this congregation, we have covenanted with one another in broad terms. Love is the spirit of this church. Now, we, as the Good Relations Committee, are embarking on helping the congregation make a behavioral covenant, articulating how we will treat one another more specifically. And we strongly encourage you to join us by registering to participate in our Zoom workshop series, the first workshop, which is going to be held on Saturday, January 23rd.
You should have received an invitation and registration form on Monday, January 4th by email, so we can adequately plan and prepare for a successful workshop. The deadline for submitting your registration is Monday, January 11th.
That is tomorrow.
If you didn't receive the registration form, please reach out to the church office.
While the challenges we face are great, we are a people of robust constitution and heart, and we will have a more specific covenant to guide our way as a congregation that will help us immensely with the greater work that we face outside of the walls of our church. We need you to be a part of shaping that, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago online worship. I am Monica Kling Garcia, your SHUG ministerial intern, and I am delighted to welcome you to worship this morning. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share, and the mission to grow our souls and heal the world. Whether you are joining us online for the first time, or you've worshipped with us thousands of times, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. No matter how much money's in your pocket, no matter if you have a PhD, a GED, or no degree, you belong here. We are a people of many races and beliefs. We are a people of many genders and sexual orientations. All of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. You belong here. I invite you now to be present to this moment. Let us enter into the service together as our prelude begins.
Last Wednesday, January 6th, incited by the sitting president, a group of domestic terrorists used violence and the threat of violence to attempt to overturn the lawful results of our presidential election. While they still roamed inside the Capitol, the president spouted his familiar lies, and then he told them, "We love you. You are very special." Make no mistake, if they were Black, they would have been arrested, shackled, and dead. 4 people lost their lives Wednesday, 4 pipe bombs planted, 56 police officers injured, national artifacts looted, the Confederate flag paraded in Capitol halls, guns drawn at the barricaded door to the House chamber, lawmakers in gas masks, a noose hanging from a wooden gallows outside. This was not protest. This was a terrorist insurrection incited by the sitting president. In keeping up with the news on Wednesday, I looked at various news sources throughout the afternoon. When I got to the Washington Post, I read "Democracy Dies in Darkness." I took their motto for the headline of the day. In a week of historic sorrow and despair, let us remember Dr. King's words. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. There are some things in our system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted, and we shall hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. May it be the cornerstone of the building and rebuilding of America, and may that hope light our chalice. May it light our way. Come, let us worship. I invite you now to join in the reciting of our covenant.
The commitment that we make to each other about what it is we're doing here, why we gather, who we're becoming, and who we are.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you now to greet one another warmly in the chat box of friendship.
Remembering it's public, say hello.
Good morning. At this time, please welcome those who are young and young at heart for a time for all ages. Thank you. This week has been an undoubtedly difficult one in our nation, and this is evident to anyone of any age who has watched the news. For kiddos who are young, rather than trying to explain the situation, you may find it helpful to ask them what they know about what's been going on if they seem distraught. This will help to keep the conversation at their level while allowing them needed emotional space as they respond without imposing your own advanced knowledge, feelings, and responses on the topic onto their thinking. In Marinius Dale's article, How to Process a Scary Day for the Nation with Your Kids, she recommended keeping responses to a simple phrase such as, I hear you. It's an important point. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your feelings with me, and that's an interesting perspective. It may also be helpful to remind your child that no matter what they do or don't know about the world's events, that they have you by their side to care for them, and that the adults in their lives want them to feel safe, supported, and loved. I also wish to take a moment to speak to the adults with or without young people in their lives to say it's important that all of us find someone that you can feel heard by. If you don't find someone in your life who can do that, please feel free to reach out to the ministerial team. Part of their role as pastoral care leaders is hearing people into speech by attending and journeying with our congregants in hard times. This role is less about fixing problems, but about helping individuals find their way and being present with our church family in that process. This morning's story about things unsaid being as helpful as things that are said is called The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorerfield. If you are joining us live this morning, please enjoy the story with us. If you are watching this at a later date, you can find this book at many locations of Chicago's public libraries. The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorerfield. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special, something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, whoosh, things came crashing down. The chicken was first to notice. Cluck, 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 click, cluck. What a shame. I'm sorry. This happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so Chicken left. Next came Bear. This is horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. But Taylor did not feel like shouting. So Bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so Elephant also left. One by one they came, the hyena. Let's laugh about it. The ostrich. Coop! Let's hide and pretend that nothing happened. The kangaroo. Tisk, tisk! What a mess, Let's throw it all away. And the snake. Let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually they all left until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit. But it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please, stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through all of it, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing." Sometimes hugs say more than words. Thank you.
Will you join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation? Begin by taking a breath with me. Let's breathe deep together. All right, that's a good start. Let's do that again. Slower, 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 all together. Yeah, slow down. Our own Chicago's own, the country's own Timuel Black likes to say history teaches hope. History teaches hope. At 102 years old, I am not prepared to disagree with a living legend. I believe it, but I don't always feel it. Maybe you neither. This week, especially. It can be hard to hold on to that hope. But then I know also we're Midwestern folks. We know how to make it through a winter. We know how to go through a brutal world right now. With no leaves, no light, no comfort. And know that there's something waiting for us on the other side of this. And that's part of how we're making it through pandemic too. And that's part of what it is in this moment, in our own history this week. Even if we don't feel it, even if we don't see too many signs of it, history teaches hope. The words for meditation this morning are from my colleague, the Reverend Odette Fulbright. I'd invite you to settle yourself, to ground yourself, to start to prepare by quieting yourself, by listening, by participating in these words. Did you rise this morning broken and hung over with weariness and pain and rage from waving too long in a brutal wind? Get up, child. Pull your bones upright. Gather your skin and muscle into a patch of sun. Draw breath deep into your lungs. You will need it, for another day calls to you. I know you ache. I know you wish the work were done, and you with everyone you have ever loved safe on a distant shore, safe and unafraid. But remember this, tired as you are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. Here and here and here also, there are others weeping and rising and gathering their courage. You belong to them, and they to you. And together we will break through and bend the arc of justice all the way down into our lives. Friends, each week we gather in the service to name honestly the difficulty and the complexity that is life, the joy and the sorrow, the way that beauty and loss are woven together, hand in hand. And we always have one and we always have the other. And so I invite you in the chat, as you feel so moved and remembering it's public, to share a sorrow, share a gratitude, or share a hope. Share a hope, remembering that you belong to each other. And together we will break through. Amen.
Our reading today is by Lao Tzu, from the 6th century before the Common Era. He was the ancient Chinese philosopher who wrote the Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. If there is to be peace in the world, the nations, the cities, there must be peace in between neighbors, in the home, and in the heart. Our smallest spheres of our lives parallel the largest spheres of our society. While the events in DC this week may seem far from our living rooms here in Chicago, the underlying human responses of rage and despair, action and paralysis, of fawning over a tyrant, happen in the same way, whether that's in our home, our nation, or our congregation. Whether we face a small conflict with a loved one in our home, or a dispute with a neighbor, or an argument with a church member, or conflict between the riotous mob in DC and our democracy, We humans respond predictably to threat. That magnitude may range a lot, from a hurtful comment made carelessly to an armed insurrection made purposefully. Most of us have heard of the two common responses to threat: fight or flight. Those are the responses we also saw in our children's story this morning. The rabbit listened. Sometimes when we perceive a threat, we respond by fighting. But this isn't necessarily a fist fight. It can look different. We might be angry and yell. Or we might want to do something right away. That often looks like trying to fix something. Maybe we make a new policy. We buy something. We set up an order. We go get something done. We might talk. We might lash out at others. Sometimes when we feel threatened, in small ways, medium ways, or big ways, we might respond by flight. But flight isn't necessarily running away from a tiger. Instead, we might make a joke to deflect and distract. It's running away from what's happening. We may deny that anything happened. That's also flight. We may minimize it, so it's small enough that it doesn't seem like something we should flee from. We may hide physically by leaving, or in more clever ways. Yet we also respond to perceived threats, large or small, in two other ways. We may freeze. This happens in the animal kingdom just as it does to us humans. It's when we find ourselves sitting in shock and bewilderment, unable to move. It happened to me on Wednesday as I sat in this office chair, slack-jawed, watching the riotous mob take over the Capitol in real time. The fourth way humans respond to threat is to fawn. This happens when we defend someone who has hurt others. We lavish them with attention or praise. We defend them. We ingratiate ourselves to that perpetrator. It's a way of keeping ourselves safe and somewhat sane. This is what Trump's followers and a few remaining politicians have been doing in response to the threats they feel. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Only when we have names for our reactions can we begin to identify them. And once we can identify them, we can begin, bit by bit, to make changes. When we make changes in our hearts, then we change our homes, our neighborhoods, maybe even our congregation, our cities, our nations, and the world. Like many congregations and any group of human beings, really, we have a history of conflict. But not only conflict, also some destructive behavior. How does it feel to hear that? It's pretty natural to feel defensive. That's flight. Maybe your instinct is to deny or minimize that. That's also flight. You just feel angry that I said that. That's fight. Maybe you're just silent. That's freeze. Threat isn't always armed insurrectionists. It can be small, perceived, and subjective. Think about this scenario. In coffee hour, someone makes a disparaging remark about another member. Here are the responses you might have seen. Some people remain silent. They're frozen. Someone shouts back an angry remark. That's fight. Someone else makes a joke. That's another form of flight. Someone else defends the person who made the comment. She's been a loyal member for 20 years and has always been nice to me. She didn't mean that. That's fawning. In 1648, the Cambridge Platform was the first document among our country's colonial settlers to create a covenant about church governance. Our UU churches, polity governance, are descended from this document. And these are the words from our forebears in 1648. The more we discern the unkind, the unbrotherly, and unchristian contention of our godly brethren and countrymen in the matters of church government, the more earnestly do we desire to see them joined together in one common faith, and ourselves with them. So rest assured, we have been in good company for at least the last 373 years, if not all of human history. And just like our Puritan forebears, about a year and a half ago, our Board of Trustees commissioned church leaders to form a Good Relations Committee, or GRC for short. The GRC has worked tirelessly, meeting twice a month, and working in between those meetings since August of 2019 and straight through the pandemic. They've reviewed concerns from members, conferred with denominational expertise, developed a comprehensive policy for conflict resolution that was adopted by our Board of Trustees and is part of our policy manual. They took training in conflict mediation and now have developed a process writing their own curricula for us to make a behavioral covenant. A behavioral covenant is a statement of shared promises of what we will do and what we will not do in our community. We have a theological covenant already. That's what we recite every Sunday, and we did earlier. Love is the spirit of this church. It's a statement of shared aspiration of our belief about how we will try to live. But it doesn't tell us how to do that. A behavioral covenant is how we can make our theological covenant a reality. As a Unitarian Universalist, we are not a creedal faith. There is no list of things one must believe, not even the 7 principles as revered as they are. We are a covenantal faith. We have a sacred promise of how we will treat one another. We are bound by this promise even when we break it. While a covenant is an everyday tool we can use, it is not an everyday document. Covenant, both as a noun and as a verb, is the foundation of our faith, more than the 7 principles, more than the 7 sources. Covenant is more foundational than the church silver, the endowment, or our reputation in the community. The ancient Hebrews would cut a covenant as an agreement between one another and God. This involves sacrificing an animal on the altar, divided, and the 2 parties walking between the 2 halves, sealing their intentions in blood. A covenant can be understood from that point on as a solemn ritual, a mutual promise between a people, one another, and their God regarding matters of life and death. Now that may seem very lofty, and that we are so far from those particular religious practices. But in discussing how we will treat one another and the promises we make no mistake, as we figured that out with our highest beliefs, it is a matter of the life or death of this congregation. The Good Relations Committee has developed a 3-part workshop series. I urge you wholeheartedly to attend. Registration ends tomorrow. Please check your email and register today. After these 3 workshops, the GRC will use the material developed by you, the participants, our members and friends, to draft a behavioral covenant. Then you can attend cottage meetings to provide feedback on that first draft. All congregants are invited then to submit written comments to be incorporated into the next draft. In the spring, our members will call a special meeting of the congregation for you to vote to adopt the behavioral covenant that you have created. We get to practice our skills and work toward building the nation we want to see right here in the sphere of our own world, in the realm of our own power, our own behavior, and the walls of this church. Our smallest spheres of life parallel the largest spheres of society. How we speak and treat one another matters, whether that is across the pew, across Hull Chapel, across the political aisle, or from the highest office in the land. Hours after the mayhem and violence, the Capitol was secured. Our lawmakers returned to session, determined to complete the job entrusted to them by the Constitution. They counted the electoral votes and confirmed Biden and Harris's election. And the cleanup began. Masons, plumbers, and tradespeople came to rebuild. Even before the fences were erected, blood still on Zachary Taylor's bust. The architect of the Capitol dispatched Mr. Castleman to the grounds. Mr. Castleman and his colleague drove a bobcat in a dump truck. He took the wooden gallows and noose and crushed it into the back of that dump truck, rendering it into splintered wooden planks. May it not leave our minds, but may we also take solace. It is gone from the grounds, and we are not rebuilding alone. There is no one to bend the arc of history toward justice but ordinary people. Our elected lawmakers, they are ordinary people too. Reporters holding up truth for public scrutiny. Black Lives Matters leaders. Teachers in school who stop their lessons to point to their students the reality of what was happening right before their eyes. The first responders, the custodial crew sweeping up broken glass. It's Mr. Castleman and countless others. And it's you and it's me. And we start in our hearts, and then in our home, our neighborhood, our congregation, our city, the nation's house, and our world. May it be so, and amen. I cannot tell you everything will be okay. I cannot tell you we'll all make it, whatever that might mean. But I can tell you this. This church has kept a promise for the last 185 years. And it's this. Whatever comes, you are not alone. We carry on, one day at a time, with these words from Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go forth in peace and and be a blessing to the world. Amen.
Thank you for worshiping with us today at the First Unitarian Church of Chicago. On behalf of our church leadership, I'd like to extend sincere gratitude to the many hands and many hearts that make the ministry of this church possible. Our staff and our worship team, our board of trustees, our committees, and our friends and members. All the work that we do as a church is financially supported by our friends and our members. We ask that you consider making a financial contribution to the church today to support the ongoing work of this congregation. You can donate either by text or by clicking the donations button that's at the bottom of our website. Details on how to do that will be on the next screen. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being a part of this community. We are so glad that you are here. Our worship has ended and our service now begins. May you be a blessing and be blessed.